Well, welcome everybody to Energize Your Fleet. Today, we're going to be talking about how to take your vehicle fleet electric and save money, improve health, and protect the environment. This webinar, first in a series, is brought to you by the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition, JEA, and the North Florida TPO. We're glad to have you with us. Look forward to sharing some insights with you about fleet electrification and look forward to answering your questions on this important topic. So the objectives for today's meeting are fairly simple. Fleet electrification, it's good for business, but it's complex. So this webinar series is all about stepping you through those complexities so that you can consider taking your own fleet electric. As I mentioned, this is intended as a series of webinars. This first one is an introduction to the topic. We're really interested in your feedback and questions so that we can shape the content of the follow-on webinars so we can go deeper into this subject, making sure that all the questions you might have about it can be answered. Along the way, we hope to share best practices, and we have some speakers today who will be doing just that. Our speakers today include myself, Ben Moore. I'm sustainability leader at RS&H and a consultant to the North Florida TPO and the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition. Wanda Forrest with the North Florida TPO is the Clean Fuels Coordinator. Dave McKee is with us. He's the Electrification Program Manager with JEA. We also have Alex Voets, eMobility Manager for Daimler. And then Greg Holzmeyer, Vice President, General Manager of North Florida Sales, who has direct experience with electrifying his fleet. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. The way to participate in this webinar is to type your questions into the comment box that you see on your screen. And you can do that at any time throughout this meeting. And we will be monitoring your questions. And we will answer them at the end during the Q&A session. So as questions occur to you, please go ahead and put them into the Q&A. All the webinar materials will be available at northfloridacleanfuels.com after the meeting. If you'd like to get them sooner than that, please put your contact information into the field on your screen, and we will happily email you as soon as possible all of the materials. We're also planning to develop a knowledge base, links, and other kinds of materials as we go through this webinar, and all of those things will be available online and via email if you share your contact information. For those of you who may be joining having not registered prior to the event, please consider providing your contact information in the fields below so that we can follow up with you and so that you're aware of future announcements in this webinar series as we plan to do a couple more before the end of the year. So here's the agenda for today. We'll start off with an introduction to this webinar series. Wanda Forrest with the North Florida TPO will help do that, and so will Dave McKee with JEA. Then we'll talk a bit about, why are we talking about electric vehicles, and how does your fleet perhaps fit into the idea of an electric vehicle? Alex with Daimler is going to talk about what EVs you can use since Daimler is a supplier of electric vehicles. And then Greg with North Florida Sales will go through a case study of how electric vehicles are transforming his own fleet. And then we'll have time for a Q&A. So with that, I'm going to introduce Wanda Forrest so she can tell you a little bit about the TPO and the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition. Wanda and I have been able to work together on these things for many years. It's been a pleasure to work with her on it, and she's a great source of knowledge on all things clean fuels. Wanda.
Good morning. Thank you, Ben, for that nice introduction. I'm Wanda Forrest. I'm the coordinator for the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition, which is hosted by the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization. We have been meeting since November 2009. We got designated by the Department of Energy as a Clean Cities Coalition in 2016. During that time, we've been quite busy. We've done a lot of work. We did an alternative fuels master plan that Ben helped prepare. We have also invested $2.5 million in infrastructure and vehicle projects, which also included 40 level 2 charging stations. We were designated in 2016 by FHWA for our alternative fuel corridors. We had several, like I-95, I-295, I think, and several of our interstates and highways designated, actually the first in the state. Ben also helped us with preparing Clay and Nassau County an alternative fuel feasibility assessment study. And last year, he did help prepare a alternative fuel infrastructure gap analysis. And this year, our project that we're so excited about is the fleet electrification workshop that we are hosting today, which will be a series of workshops. And with that, I want to turn it back over to Ben.
Thanks, Wanda. Now I want to introduce Dave McKee with JEA. Now, JEA is a great supporter of fleet electrification, and I want Dave to share with you a bit about their views on this important topic.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning. JEA is happy to be partnering with the North Florida TPO and the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition to advance the conversation on fleet electrification in North Florida. Several factors may cause fleet electrification in North Florida to surge in the near future. And we believe fleet electrification has the potential to be a fulcrum that will really drive overall EV adoption in the region by educating the public and helping consumers overcome unknowns like range, anxiety, things like that. Factors like corporate environmental goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the lower total cost of ownership of EVs are likely to compel many businesses to electrify their fleets. And locally, we have a powerhouse logistics industry with lots of fleet vehicles that could be converted to electric. There is an inexpensive and clean fuel available to power those vehicles in the future, and JEA is ready to become that fuel source of choice. As a community-owned asset, remember, JEA electric sales return significant value to the community by contributing to the City of Jacksonville General Fund and keeping those dollars local. So thanks again for your attendance, and I hope you get a lot of good information from the seminars. Back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Dave. And you can tell Dave's dogs are totally on board with the electrification thing.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Enthusiasm is more than welcome. So, why electric vehicles? I'm going to go through some of the reasons why it might be worthwhile. I mean, first of all, the main reason is that it's happening already. So, the data that we have suggests that there are 1,800 plus electric vehicles in North Florida. And last year, there was a 49% growth in sales. So EVs are coming, and they're coming quickly. So far, those have almost been all passenger vehicles, but as you'll hear later today, shortly, medium and heavy duty trucks are coming into the picture as well, which means big fleets can start to get involved. Depending on the projection that you look at, somewhere between 10 and 60% of all sales by 2040 of light duty vehicles could be electric. And that doesn't even consider the medium and heavy duty vehicles that are coming online. So this is a mega trend, and the question is, should you get involved in it or not? And that's a fair question. We like to think about the benefits along three lines. Could you may be interested in driving cleaner, reducing your environmental footprint. You might be interested in driving happier. That could include your customers, and that could include your employees. And you're, I'm sure, already interested in driving efficient. That means, getting where you need to go with less money and perhaps more profit. So let's talk about each of these. On the drive clean, from the drive clean perspective, transportation is the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, and that's continuing to grow as folks like JEA decarbonize the power supply. EVs can cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50% or more. What about air quality? Transportation is a major source of smog that negatively affects health. In fact, recent science suggests that air quality is even more dangerous than we previously thought, and electric vehicles can reduce environmental damages by 50% or more. Water quality. Unfortunately, Florida leads the nation in underground fuel tanks awaiting cleanup. And there's no spill contamination risk from fuel, fluids, etc., from electric vehicles. So it's great for water quality as well. What about driving happy? So, you know, freight demand growth is really expected to pick up. I mean, think about your life right now where you're getting more and more delivered to your house and during this pandemic. Um, and so that's really something we want to make sure that is beneficial to our customers and to our drivers. Worker health and safety, I mean, we're talking about a vehicle that is very quiet, no fumes, no vibration. That means if you're driving one of these vehicles all day long, you know, you have less fatigue. You may stay in that trucking job longer because it's just more pleasant. And then, you know, it goes without saying, brand enhancement. If you've been watching TV lately, you've been seeing Amazon touting their electric vehicle fleet on the airwaves. They're purchasing 100,000 electric vehicles. There's lots of examples out there. One that I thought was interesting, Cliff Bar, which you guys who go to the gym all the time, and gals who go to the gym all the time, you might be eating these things. 100% electric vehicle fleet by 2030, and they're also incentivizing their customers or their employees to buy electric vehicles and high efficiency vehicles. It's not just in the corporate sector though. Smart cities. The city of Columbus, Ohio, which won a grant, a smart cities grant several years ago, is converting 300 of its vehicle fleet to electric vehicles and inspiring other municipalities in the Columbus area, like the Ohio State University, to convert its vehicles to electric. And what about driving efficient? These vehicles, you know, really the magic is in the fuel economy. Electric vehicle or electric motors are a lot more efficient than internal combustion engines, up to 50% plus more efficient. And that means you can lower your operational costs through reduced fuel expenditure. There's a lot of evidence mounting that you can reduce your maintenance costs over time. You know, if you think about it, there's 2,000 plus moving parts in an ICE engine, internal combustion engine, and there's a lot less in an electric vehicle. That could reduce downtime because emission systems failures or repairs are the #1 cause for downtime right now. And there's no emission systems on an electric vehicle. Price volatility. You know, your diesel and gas prices, they probably look pretty good right now, but this history says that they go up and down and they swing quite drastically, which introduces a lot of risk into your business. So for risk managers out there, electric vehicles can play a benefit. And then there are increasingly incentives out there, whether they be tax incentives at the federal level, utility incentives, and then, you know, grants like the Volkswagen settlement that's out there right now. Diving into the economics a little bit more, right now, I mean, I think everybody knows that electric vehicles cost more upfront, but that's not always going to be the case. You know, light duty vehicles within 5 years or so might cost the same as the comparable internal combustion version. And then medium heavy duty trucks, that could, a similar situation could be happening. But it's not just all about upfront costs, as all of you know. We have to look at the total cost of ownership. And you know, there are instances today where the total cost of ownership is as good or better than the internal combustion engine, the diesel vehicle. It's all going to depend on your specific instance, though, and this is an area where you know, really understanding electric vehicles is what you need to do to have an accurate total cost of ownership projection for your fleet, and that's part of why we're bringing this webinar to you, so you can make those smart decisions. But, you know, before we leave the economics, there's also a lot of intangible costs and benefits that often get excluded from the total cost of ownership, like those environmental benefits, like those social benefits that also are going to be part of your decision making. I would encourage you to check out the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. They're a great resource when it comes to taking your fleet electric, and they've done a lot of research on total cost of ownership. And what their research seems to indicate is that from an economics perspective, you know, electric vehicles, electric trucks are just as good or better than the diesel or gasoline competitor, perhaps now, depending on the characteristics of your fleet, but by 2025, it's going to be very, very evident for almost all kinds of fleets. Environmentally, you know, there's really no competition. You know, the electric vehicles are better. And then from a social perspective, I think it's also true that there's a lot of, they have a great advantage. So where do you fit in? I'm going to take you through a lot of the various factors that define your fleet real quickly and talk about how electric vehicles impact it. And then Alex will talk a bit more about this when he's introducing you to the Daimler business line. So duty cycle, the performance of your fleet is totally tied to your duty cycle, and your duty cycle is going to be unique. You may have data that you can leverage on your fleet to understand the performance and fine tune the electric vehicles in your fleet. But this is an area where the uniqueness of your fleet has to be understood and matched to the right application. And we're not saying in this webinar that you should take your entire fleet electric. There might be certain vehicles in your fleet that are best suited to be electric, others diesel, and over time that mix may change. Also thinking about your drive cycle. If your drive cycle is on the light side, you might not need to have as big a battery. You may have lower depth of recharge required when you bring your vehicle back to base. And you might be able to deal with slower charging, which means this might be less expensive for you to get into. A heavier drive cycle, you might need bigger batteries. You might need a real deep recharge when you bring it back. And that might mean that you need faster charging and more infrastructure. Some things to think about as you consider going electric. What about your routes? If you have well-defined repetitive routes under 100 miles, like a hub and spoke type model, there are electric vehicles and trucks today that really will match that really well. For those of you who are running fleets in a kind of a random, it's certainly not random to you, but like in a random pattern, you're going multi-point, you're going on long distance routes, you're going to find it maybe perhaps more challenging to go to electric vehicles today. Locations. Do your vehicles always come back to the same location every day? If so, then it makes sense it's really easy to think about developing a charging depot at that location. But if flexibility is required, if for instance vehicles are staying overnight at your driver's home, or they need to stop somewhere on the way to their final destination, are you going to have charging infrastructure available there or not? And if you're not, how does that affect your ability to operate your fleet? What about shifts? Some of you have just a single shift, and so it makes you go out for the day, you come back, you charge the vehicle. If you have a more elaborate shift, like a dual driver, a team driver, or slip seating, all of a sudden, how are you gonna get that vehicle charged as you switch shifts? And then what do you do? What are your employees doing while the vehicle is charging? The timing and labor of fueling. If you think about it, right now you probably fuel 1 to 2 times a week your diesel vehicle, versus with an electric vehicle you'll probably be charging daily. And then when you fuel with diesel, that's a 5-minute experience. Depending on your infrastructure, that could be half an hour of electric vehicle charging up to several hours of electric vehicle charging. So how does that fit into your day, and how does that fit into your labor? And what are you paying people to do during the time that the truck can't be driven? What time of day will you be charging? Nighttime? That's great, because overnight, the electric utility, Dave can talk about this more perhaps in the Q&A. At nighttime, there's a lot of excess electricity that could be used. During the daytime, if you're charging during peak hours, that really puts a strain on the utility, and they may want to charge you more for that electricity. Do you need to charge multiple times a day? That makes it even a little bit more complex. And then what about your fleet size? A lot of people say like, okay, a larger fleet, or a larger company with more resources, that allows you to do the business planning, the internal testing, chasing grants, all that seems easier for a large fleet. For a smaller fleet, maybe that's more difficult. So that's something to think about. And then finally, change management. With any new technology, especially one that's advancing and developing as fast as this, there's a learning curve. And what are your expectations? If you go into this, I guess, thinking that this is going to be a slam dunk and everyone's going to think you're a rock star, that might be an expectation you need to moderate. And similarly with your drivers and your maintenance staff and your managers, are you going to be able to kind of withhold judgment until you start to see the benefits? And Greg might be able to go into some of those experiences of change management. So these are just the things that we think you need to keep in mind as you consider going electric. These are things we would love to dive into more depth in on future webinars, and these are things that Alex and Greg are going to also touch on a little bit more as we go through this experience. Finally, I want to leave you with another kind of big thought. You're used to running your fleet sort of in silos probably. You've got your vehicles and you've got someone in your organization who's responsible for procuring vehicles. And then you're used to buying your fuel. And you got someone in your organization who might, buy vehicle fuel and try to hedge against the volatility in the price of diesel. And then you got someone who manages your facilities. And if you need a new facility, this person is involved with like renting that space or, getting design and construction going. But I think with electric vehicles, and this is insight Mike Rowan at Duke Energy provided to me, this is all going to change, right? All these things are kind of mixed together. So, the person who is procuring your vehicles is all of a sudden going to be affecting your facilities manager, because now you might need space. You might need space for electric vehicle charging stations, and then at the same time, you're going to be purchasing electricity from a utility. Now you might have to think about the utility infrastructure that's coming into your facility. So there's a way more integrated approach to thinking about electric vehicles than diesel or gasoline that you have to go through before you can get to all these benefits that we discussed. And we hope to go into more depth on this in the future. But in the interest of getting to our featured speakers, I'm going to now hand it over to Alex. He's eMobility manager with Daimler, and he's going to be able to tell you a lot about how these electric vehicle fleets are manifesting themselves in the present day. Alex.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ben. Yeah, that was definitely a very good and comprehensive overview. Definitely agree with your points that you made there, and I'll try to pick up on some of them, and then I'm sure we'll have more discussion in the Q&A as well. So again, thank you for having me, Ben. My name is Alex Voets. I'm the eMobility Sales and Marketing Manager for Daimler Trucks North America. One of our most prominent brands is maybe the Freightliner brand. We have one picture of one of the early production or early pilot products on the screen here. And I'll give you an overview today of where we stand at Freightliner when it comes to electric trucks, medium and heavy duty, the lessons learned that we had, and some of the outlook. So if we want to jump to the next slide, really, I'm going to talk about three different things. First is going to be our Freightliner electric innovation fleet. That is a pilot project that has 30 trucks, 20 heavy duty electric Cascadias, and 10 medium duty EM2s. Those trucks are all running today. They're all in customers' hands, and I'll give you some first-hand feedback, the reason why we did it, what the learnings were from it. I'll next talk about the customer experience fleet, the CX fleet. That is an additional 8 trucks, and they are also, almost all of them are already delivered in customers' hands. If you follow Freightliner on social media, or if you follow news outlets, you'll probably see these running around, and you'll see our customers make an announcement. We make an announcement about that. It's definitely very exciting. There's nothing better than seeing trucks on the road and talking to the drivers that actually drive them every day and have that real life experience. So we're very proud that we have these. And then of course the crowning jewel is going to be our series production. That's going to be in about 2 years from today. So I'll talk a little bit about what's coming there in the future. So let's jump to the next slide, and I'll start off with what is really the difference on electric trucks, because that is oftentimes a question that people have in the very beginning. If we look at this here really side by side, on the left side is our traditional diesel product. This is a Freightliner Cascadia. And if you look at the powertrain, really we start with the engine, transmission, and after treatment system under the hood in the front. We have the diesel tanks that are highlighted there in blue as well. And then we have the driveline and the axles that really propel the vehicle forward. Now, how does that look for a battery electric truck? Usually when we think battery electric, we start with talking about the batteries, and you see here highlighted in blue on the right side, the batteries are mounted under the frame rail, and then they are connected to the e-axle, the electric axle in the back. And the e-axle is really the combination of a motor and the axle in one. And they will drive the vehicle forward essentially. In the front of the hood, we still have electric auxiliaries. So everything that was traditionally driven off the crankshaft is now electrified in some way, shape, or form. So your air pump and other things. So those are really the high level differences when you think side by side. And by the way, this is the last image of a digital rendering in my presentation. Everything else is real pictures of real trucks on the real road, because digital renderings don't get a job done. Trucks will, and that's why we like to talk about the actual real trucks. If we jump to the next slide, a little bit more in detail our Freightliner electric innovation fleet. So why did we come up with this pilot project so far before our actual startup production? Well, the reason really is that electric powertrain for trucks is something new. It's new in the industry, and it's very important to get it right. That's why we're working very closely with our customers. We talk with them on a very regular basis. We talk with a total of about 35 fleets twice a year in our electric vehicle council. But we also have a very intimate relationship through our innovation fleet with those 30 trucks, where we really have customer feedback every day. These trucks are running every day. They're hauling freight every day. We went with our customers through the whole process of installing infrastructure, the lessons learned that come from it, and we can actively shape our series product based on the learnings that we get from these trucks. The two trucks on the right side here, you see, those were delivered in August of last year, and they were really the first two electric Cascadias that we put in the market. If we jump to the next slide, some of the early learnings and driver feedback. So Ben already talked about the importance of knowing the right use case, understanding the shifts that you run, what weights you have, what routes you have, the charging of the trucks. Those are all very important considerations, and doing it firsthand is really the right way to learn about this. So on the very left side, you see two of the trucks that are in operation, and you see they pulling their full 53-foot trailer in everyday operation. In the middle, you see some of the impressions from our charging infrastructure installations. We actually have charging infrastructure here at our headquarters in Portland as well. We have a variety of different chargers that we install, so we go through that process ourselves. But also we work through this process with our customers. And on the bottom, you see there are a variety of different chargers that are installed. Sometimes there's even stationary storage. Charging in general can be a very overwhelming topic for a lot of people. It's usually the first thing that you should think about, and that's when you really need to plan a little bit further in advance. You need to understand not how many trucks you're going to purchase in the next 1 or 2 years, but how many trucks you need to purchase in 5 or 10 years. So you really have to have a little bit of a long-term plan. We already talked about incentives. Incentives oftentimes help overcome some of these investments. So if these are available in your area, that will significantly reduce the cash that's needed from you. Also, there is considerations if you have enough power at your depot, how fast you need to charge. Those are all very important questions, and we will certainly help you through this. We don't sell chargers ourselves, but we have guided a lot of our customers through that process. So having the right partner on your side that can draw on lessons learned is very important. So make sure to reach out to us, make sure to speak to your utility company. There's a lot of different utility companies in the United States, and everybody is a little bit different. We have one on the call here today, and I'm sure he's going to answer questions as well. But that is a very important process to get right. And then on the right side, just some of the impressions from the drivers. So usually what we always hear, this thing is whisper quiet. They don't need to crank up their radio to overpower the engine noise. There's no smell like diesel. Oftentimes when you drive in a traditional truck all day long, you have a little bit of smell on your hands. That's not the case here. There's also a sense of pride. Other drivers will ask about, is this truck really electric? So there's a sense of pride that the drivers take as well. Regenerative braking, or recuperating the energy from braking, is definitely a feature that everybody loves. You have the traditional engine brake on traditional trucks, which really waste the energy, but with regenerative braking, you can get the energy back in your battery. So that's definitely a feature that drivers give us very good feedback about. Also, there's generally less vibration. There's shorter pre and post trip inspection. So overall, we're really happy that we went through with this pilot project and that we got all those learnings. If we jump to the next slide, this is a picture here that we took in February of 2020. And back then we reached the milestone of 100,000 miles accumulated on our innovation fleet. And we thought it was really a big milestone. So we brought everybody together to take a picture here. But if you give it another click here, Ben, just a few months later, we're browsing through those milestones so quickly that we're actually not able to keep up with the picture taking. So I had to very cheaply Photoshop this here to give you an accurate count. And this number is from a week and a half ago. So now we're actually closer to 400,000 miles. So I think I need to get a digital counter or something on the slides here to keep up to date. But overall, having miles on the road is definitely, there's no substitute for experience. So if we jump to the next slide, you will see that the Freightliner Electric Innovation Fleet was so successful that we now decided to actually put another pilot project out there even before our startup production in 2022. And this is the customer experience fleet. So as more and more customers are talking to us and more customers really are on this journey for electrification of their fleet, we put another 8 fully battery electric trucks out there, 6 e-Cascadias and 2 EM2s. And these are really meant to cycle through a variety of customers. You see on the right side here, 2 of the deliveries, 2 customers that you see they're already in operation as well today. About half of them are delivered. The other half will be delivered here in the next couple of weeks. And that really gives the customers the opportunity to kind of try before you buy, to put those trucks in their use cases and their routes, touch and feel, driving themselves, get feedback from their drivers, and so on and so forth. So that's really a nice kind of stepping stone for a lot of customers that think about deploying these at large scale a little bit further down the road. If we go to the next slide, you see that we're obviously in the times of COVID, so everything is a little bit more difficult, but we're still charging ahead with this. We expand our reach with those trucks. You can also see on the right side, this is really a mobile charger that was developed in-house here to put an existing charge post on this kind of movable podium so that it can be easily moved from customer to customer before they really think about the long-term plans of putting infrastructure into the ground. And there's also mobile chargers and maybe down the road some public infrastructure available, but right now that's just not the case. So we had to be creative here to give our customers the opportunity to try this before committing. If we go to the next slide, having 5 trucks and 10 trucks, and in our case now 38 trucks on the road is nice, but really the question is, when are we going to see significant numbers? When do we see the hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of trucks? And that for us is really the serious product. We will start production of our EM2 and e-Cascadia here in the Portland plant, which is an established truck manufacturing plant today, in 2022. And we will have 2 variants. Really, the EM2 here will be this pickup and delivery type of application, class 6 and 7. You'll have battery sizes up to 315 kilowatt hours that will give you a range of up to 230 miles. And you see this is a full 26 to 33,000 pound truck. And then on the bottom, you see that will be our e-Cascadia as a day cab. And this is really your truck for distribution applications and drayage type of applications. It's a full class 8 tractor. You'll have up to 475 kilowatt hour of battery capacity, and that will give you a range of target about 250 miles. And a lot of the specifications that you see here is really actively informed through our pilot projects. The feedback that we get, the conversation that we have is so valuable, so important. We made a lot of design changes on these trucks to really get it right, to really bring the right product to the market at the right time. And I think that's my last slide. I'll hand it back over to you, Ben, and I'm looking forward to the discussion a little bit later.
Thanks, Alex. It's really exciting what you are bringing to market shortly, and thank you for sharing. Folks, if you have some questions in mind for Alex, go ahead and get them in the chat, and we'll pick them up in the Q&A. Next, I want to introduce Greg Holzmeyer. As I mentioned at the outset, he's Vice President and General Manager of North Florida Sales. And if any of you who in the community here who like beer, Greg is essential. But the really interesting thing about Greg is that Greg has started this journey of converting electric vehicles, or converting some of his fleet to electric vehicles. And so we wanted to bring Greg into the conversation so you could hear from a fleet that is doing it. So without any further ado, what Greg and I are going to do is we're going to do a little Q&A interview so that he have a brief conversation so he can kind of share with you his experience at North Florida Sales. So Greg, thanks again for joining us. I know people are going to be really interested to hear about your experience. Let's start out with how many electric vehicles are in your fleet today?
Well, thanks for having me, Ben. We have 25 Nissan Leafs that we bought about a year ago, and then we just put another tranche of 25 more. So we have 50 Nissan Leafs that we've added in the last year and a half.
And how are you using these Nissan Leafs in your
Well,
fleet?
as you mentioned, we are the Budweiser distributor here in Jacksonville. So in addition to the trucks that carry all the beer, we have quite a bit of service that goes along with them. We have line cleaners who clean the beer lines in your restaurants. We have sales reps, and then we have merchandisers. So that's our light fleet. We have about 150 of those vehicles.
So what made you decide to take the plunge in your light fleet?
Honest answer?
Yeah, let's get the
Money.
honest answer.
Money, money, money. We had an aging fleet that was vans that got 10 to 12 miles to the gallon, and we were running, I just told you, 150 of them around 7 days a week. We were burning through a ton of fuel. And so we decided to explore this option. Of course, the optics of the green and contributing to the community, as well as the fact that we figured out that our 50 Leafs are the equivalent of planting over 100,000 trees, the savings in carbon dioxide emissions.
Cool. So, okay, money is what got you into this. Now you're also seeing some other benefits. Once you made the decision that you could, or got the insight that you could save some money doing this, what was the first step that you took? How did you get started with this? How did you go from 0 to 60 on electric vehicals?
Fast. It felt fast. It wasn't fast. About 2 years ago, I started looking into EVs. I didn't know anything, and just started asking questions and looking at the options. Of course, crunching all the numbers. Spent most of the time, honestly, thinking the numbers are too good to be true. There's got to be something I'm missing. And I contacted the experts. I contacted JEA. They've been extremely helpful in getting us up and running, and started learning. There's tons to learn in this avenue. All
right, so I'm guessing that it hasn't all been sweetness and light from the get-go. What have been some of the challenges as you've gone into something as dramatic as taking your gasoline fleet and taking it to electric?
I think you mentioned earlier employee buy-in. It was new. It was change. I don't know if you've read the book Who Moved My Cheese, but we have a ton of that here. I don't like change. So that was the big challenge. And then the installation of the charging equipment, which we put on site, exceeded my budget. I underestimated what that would be, and that's because I didn't do enough homework on it. So those were some of the challenges. In addition to what I hope is going to get better, which is a lack of public charging stations. It's been more challenging than I would have thought to charge these vehicles because they're just not in convenient places for us. I think they're going to start going in convenience stores, which will help us a ton. But that's convenience gas. I think they're getting on board with the fact that if that vehicle's charging for 30 minutes, that customer's going to come in and buy some product inside the store.
So now that you've had the experience of electric vehicles in your fleet for a while now, what have the benefits been, and are there any benefits that you maybe have in addition to the ones you have realized? Are there others that you expect to be realizing in the years to come with your fleet so far?
Same answer to the earlier question, money. It has been significant. As JEA knows, we consume a lot of electricity. We run a controlled environment warehouse. We also store some kegs in a near freezing temperature. And we run it 24/7. So our electric bill is significant. And quite honestly, I don't know if it's COVID related. I don't think it is, but our electric bill hasn't changed much. It really hasn't. We haven't we haven't noticed any significant increase in charging these vehicles here on our site. It's kind of scary.
But when you say money, you must have been saving money in other places, not just electricity with these vehicles, right?
Yes, the gas, the fuel, our fuel is, we're saving 5 figures a month in fuel cost.
If you don't mind me asking you a follow-up question to that, are there other areas in which you've been saving money? I mean, some people say that electric vehicles reduce your maintenance costs once you get the hang of them. Have you gotten to that point yet?
We haven't, because they're only a year old, but that was part of my research, and I think that will be another significant part of it, because those old vans we were running, we were spending money to keep them running. So yes, the safety, the vehicles have exceeded my expectations. I would say definitely. The employees did buy in. I had a lot of doubters at the beginning. Everyone doubted, and from the ownership to the mechanics to the actual end user, everyone doubted it until they experienced it. Now, a lot of them were getting brand new vehicles to ride around in, so that helped quite a bit. But the efficiency, the pride, the applicability to our business for these vehicles has been perfect. It's a perfect answer to our challenges.
Just one more follow-up on that. How about your customers? Have they noticed what you've been doing, and have you been getting any feedback from them?
Yes, they have. And we're doing some quiet social media stuff on it, just showing what we're doing for the community. Yes, there's been a lot of feedback. I'm actually looking forward to when we are parked servicing an account and are plugged in, we have that billboard going all the time that North Florida Sales is going green. But again, there's been some challenges on getting all those stations installed. I think it's going to get better, I hope.
Okay. So sounds like you've had a pretty good experience so far with your light fleet with those Nissan Leafs. Your fleet is you got a lot. You have more light fleet that it sounds like are running on gasoline, and then you have some heavy duty stuff, medium duty and heavy duty stuff. What are your plans going forward with your fleet?
Plans are to keep an eye on the market. We will be in the market next for some pickup trucks and some heavier sedans. But then when Alex and his company are hitting full efficiencies and working out some of the challenges he mentioned, I could see us going to our trucks. I think we're still 4, 5, 6 years away from that, but the industry's moving fast.
Well, thanks, Greg. Folks who want Greg to answer a couple other questions that occur to them, put it in the Q&A, because now we are ready for your questions. So, the audience, what do you need to know about electric fleets for you to kind of continue to take steps towards, realizing all these benefits that Greg has realized and other fleets are realizing? So type your questions into the Q&A, and I will get them directed to the presenter. Alex, we've got one for you. What type of charger? Are we talking level 2 or level 3? And maybe explain for the audience what the difference is between those two things. What type of charger are going to be matching with your vehicles, and how long to recharge after a workday?
Sure. Yeah. So when people ask what type of charger, I usually answer 2 questions. One is there's level 1, level 2, but when we talk about heavy duty trucks or any larger batteries, we usually talk DC fast charging. Some people might refer to it as level 3, but really DC fast charging is what we call it. It's really at least 60 kilowatt of power that makes sense. We see customers install 60, 80, up to 150, sometimes more kilowatt of charge power. And what's important is that it's a CCS1 charge plug. So that's the most common standard in the United States. We have no interest in creating barriers and coming up with a proprietary charge plug. So we're including the most common standard that you have right now. It will be the same that you see when you drive to your Walmart and they have the Electrify America kind of charging installation there. Of course, driving a truck into an area where you usually charge passenger vehicles is not really practical, which is why most use cases that we talk about right now are really the ones where people install their own charging infrastructure at their depots and yards. We can certainly help customers and interested people through that process a little bit, because there's a lot of things that go into it. Greg just explained that in his area, he has refrigerator warehouses. When you have a refrigerator warehouse, that's usually a good sign, because that means you already have a lot of power at your depot or yard, and the charge equipment is not going to warrant upgrades there. But if you have, kind of a smaller warehouse somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you might need installation upgrades. So those are all some of the easy questions that we can talk you through in the very beginning to really decide which one is the best depot or yard to start with. And as far as the question on recharge time, we usually quote 2 to 3 hours of recharge, but really it's a case-by-case decision. What I always give people as an indication to understand it a little bit better is to look at the battery size. In our case, you saw the medium duty had 315 kilowatt hours and the heavy duty 475 kilowatt hours. And if you look at the charge power that you look at from your charging equipment, because the higher charge power you buy, the more expensive it gets. But let's say you buy the 150 kilowatts, that means it would take about 3 hours to get a full charge in that 475 kilowatt hour battery pack. So dividing the battery pack size by the charge power gives you an easy estimate how long it would take. It's not exactly a linear curve, but at least gives you an indication.
Thanks, Alex. So a follow-up or a related question over to Greg. So Greg, could you describe a bit more about the charging infrastructure you use for your vehicles and sort of the logistics of it? When do you charge them? How does that all work with your labor and all that?
Well, the first 25 units that we put in about a year and a half ago, vehicles we put in service, we installed, those are leave here vehicles. The employee goes out, runs their route, and comes back, and the vehicle spends the night here. We set up 13 stations that each charge 2 vehicles. And again, that was more expensive, but we're set up for the very long future. As Alex said, we have a lot of electricity here, so it wasn't that much of a challenge. The second 25 that we're just rolling out, we deploying those to our sales reps who are working from home, and we're case by case basis kind of thing. That's why it's so important for us to find the public charging stations. It's gone better than I would have thought. What we have done is we are installing the proper voltage plugs at their house, and then letting them plug in there, and they're powering them overnight.
So that's an interesting kind of contrast where Alex is talking about medium to heavy duty vehicles and how the use case really demands a depot charging kind of setup, right, Alex? Whereas, and Greg, you're talking about light duty passenger vehicles where, it might be possible to use public charging infrastructure to support a fleet like that. Am I getting that right, guys, between the two of you?
Yes.
Yeah, for us, at least currently, that's still the setup that we're looking at. Like you described earlier, Ben, really this hub and spoke kind of routes, dedicated, repeatable routes, right? Regional, drayage, pickup and delivery. But of course, long term, as battery technology evolves more, as charge speed increases more, as we see investment in public, heavy duty and commercial charging infrastructure, that's when we see those use cases really expand, also in the medium and heavy duty space, from the first use cases, which are really this hub and spoke, to then the longer over the road technologies. Right now, really, like you also pointed out, Ben, the charge speed versus the refueling time on diesel is really a big deal. So if we say our electric truck takes 2 hours, maybe 3 hours to charge to a full charge, the diesel truck might take 20 minutes to refuel. That's usually not a break that you want to take when you hop from spot to spot. But as we see, the charge rates and new technology move forward, and Daimler is actually heading the Char-in initiative, which is looking at megawatt chargers. So that will dramatically increase the amount of miles you get per minute charge. And that's when I think we'll see more of the also public charging for heavy duty trucks. But right now in the beginning, really having charging infrastructure at your depot and yard seems to be more fitting, because you have oftentimes the one shift applications and those type of use cases.
Thanks, Alex. Here's a question I think both of y'all could address, but let's start with Greg. So the viewers are interested in hearing more stories about the drivers and what they think, and maybe how their viewpoints evolved over time in these vehicles.
I think they're tickled to death with the vehicle, and I come back to that. This particular vehicle, I think one of the challenges is that a lot of people don't understand about EVs is that, well, it doesn't have enough pickup. And quite honestly, it's the opposite of that, because you're going from, you said 0 to 60, you're going very quickly. And all it takes is one press on the accelerator to realize that, wow, I've got a speedy little car here under me, and I can take it anywhere. So they quickly overcome that first time they hit the gas pedal. Their ability to tell the story, to talk to consumers, to talk to retail partners of ours, and to be able to tell the story of we're saving this number of trees, or it's kind of cool to be on the cutting edge. We don't typically like being on the cutting edge because we have such a regimented process, but this has flowed right in with it, and it hasn't been a problem.
So your drivers are real comfortable kind of carrying that message out into the community, and they're proud of being able to talk about that.
Absolutely.
What about the brands that you distribute? Do you think it's important? Do you think that your commitment to electric vehicles has any influence over all the the beers that you were doing business with?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we're one of the first ones getting on board, and I would envision them probably telling our story on a national scale in one day in the future. We don't, as far as the brands go, we don't put logos on the vehicles anymore, because those became target signs, as you can imagine, for people looking for dollar signs. So we just put our company logo on the vehicles now. But as far as the overall awareness of the brands, yes, all of our suppliers, who are obviously very big into this initiative as well, are tickled to death.
Alex, from some of your pilots, I'm sure you're getting some feedback on the driver experience. Any stories to tell from that?
Yeah, I touched a little bit on it, but yeah, it's the driver feedback is probably the most exciting part of my job, right? Because we don't drive trucks, but hearing the end user really tell you what they think about the trucks is really cool. And just like Greg said, in the beginning, there's usually a little bit of bias. Ironically, there's a bias against the thing where electric powertrains actually shine the most, which is acceleration and torque. I mean, these have instant torque, instant acceleration, and especially if you haul 80,000 pounds on a highway, it is really nice for drivers to be able to keep up with traffic, to not really have to wait a long time to merge. These are really nice things. And then as far as you mentioned, Ben, the transportation industry is a big contributor to greenhouse gases. So after some time, no mom or dad is going to say, I don't want cleaner air for my kids. So it's really a very, very short transition time until people are completely behind that, usually when they drive it for the first time and when they come out with a smile. So those are the best stories and best part of my job for sure.
Yeah, that's true. For anyone on the phone who hasn't test driven an electric vehicle of any sort, I highly recommend it. It is definitely a different experience. And yeah, I came out of my first test drive with a smile on my face. So I think it's worth giving it a shot if you haven't already done it. Sticking with you, Alex, we have a question regarding battery life. What do you expect that the battery life is going to be in your Freightliner heavy duty vehicles? And how should people think about that as part of their kind of total cost of ownership?
Right. Yeah, we don't expect that you would change out the battery over the life of the useful life of the truck. So it depends on how long you drive your truck. But if you drive it, let's say 10 years or so, we don't anticipate that you would ever change your battery in the vehicle. The battery technology gets better and better. We use lithium-ion batteries, so they are the most suitable batteries right now for electric vehicles. So battery is really not the concern that we have as far as a serviceable item.
Kind of a, I guess, sort of a follow-up to that. I mean, what are the barriers to, as you see it, to long haul trucking with electric powertrains?
Yeah, so you mentioned it earlier in your introduction. Weight is definitely a big consideration when you think about transportation. Of course, you can essentially put unlimited amount of range on a truck, but that means with high amounts of weight. So you really have to find the sweet spot between how much weight do you want to, how much heavier you want your truck to be versus how far can you drive. And that's why through our innovation fleet and talking to customers, we kind of landed at the 250-mile range for the e-Cascadia and 230 for the EM2, because it finds that balance between not having a lot of weight penalty, but still covering most of the use cases that people want in the beginning, those hub and spoke, regional pickup, delivery, drayage type of applications. I think if we think more long-term, as the battery capacity or the battery density goes up, so essentially you get more kilowatt hour per pound of weight, and the ability of batteries to charge quicker goes up, that's when we will really see those long haul applications. But right now the batteries do add a lot of weight, and it's not weight that people want to carry. So that's what we see as kind of the next step in the battery technology, and therefore the step into the long haul applications.
So maybe to summarize for listeners, it sounds like from Greg's experience, light duty vehicles, they're here today. They're being used today. Greg's making money off of them. The medium duty, it's here tomorrow, and we're talking about very soon, Alex, with your products. And then the heavy duty, Class 8 type application, maybe a bit further into the future. Is that fair to say?
I would say for us, medium heavy duty on the same timeline, both 2022, but heavy duty has a variety of applications, more the regional applications for heavy duty, like you said, tomorrow, 2022, the long haul heavy duty applications a little bit further in the future, yes.
Okay, thank you. Greg, a question about your kind of journey through the total cost of ownership, the ROI, all that kind of stuff. Did incentives play a role in your having this pencil out? Were there regulations and policies that were supportive, that you felt like made it happen? Talk us through how you kind of went through the economic decision to pull the trigger on this.
That was one of the challenges, and that's one of the things that I say learn about. There were quite a few things out there, and in fact, a lot of the savings was in the purchase of the vehicles, as they kept finding new ways to help us out. They brought the prices of the vehicles down quite a bit.
You're talking about the auto sales,
yes.
folks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you actually didn't use incentives to do this project, is that right?
No, not of any significance.
Fantastic. All right, so folks, we're almost out of time. We really appreciate these fantastic questions you sent over. We really appreciate Greg and Alex, you guys sharing your experiences and answering questions. We really appreciate Dave McKee from JA being a big sponsor of this. Really appreciate the North Florida TPO and the Clean Fuels Coalition being a sponsor of this. We want to know what you think. So if you don't mind giving us some feedback in the Q&A, what would you like us to cover in the next webinar? We plan one roughly a month from now. We could cover any topic you heard today in more depth. And we really want to be a resource to you. So we want to design the content of our next webinar based on your feedback. Please send us an email. Please put our information in the Q&A. Webinar materials will be available at northfloridacleanfuels.com within a couple of days. So please visit that website. It's a great resource. We'll be posting additional resources there related to total cost of ownership, related to some of the materials you saw in this presentation. So please visit. If you would like us to contact you immediately with the slide deck, put your email into the Q&A. As I mentioned, Stay tuned. If you want to attend the next webinar, make sure we have your contact information and we will be reaching out to you shortly. And you can also always reach out to me personally. I got my email, my phone number up on the screen, and I'm happy to hear from you if you would like to contact me directly. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today. I had a lot of fun and appreciate it very much. We will now end the webinar and see you next time.